This is a guide for the Mahtnan gear sets, which were added to TERA on PC when patch 108 was released. Let's get right into it. The new sets are called Mahtnan gear, and the items come in 3 rarity levels. The rare gear has blue icons, the legendary gear has yellow icons, and the icons of the purple gear are mythical, or something like that. There's also incomplete rare gear, which you get for free when you reach level 65. You should replace the incomplete set as soon as possible. More on that later. The maximum enchant level for the new gear sets is +12. Each piece of gear has some fixed stats, a support option, and up to 3 random options. When trying to enchant, the gear cannot break or downgrade anymore, and stat infusions are a thing of the past as well. You cannot upgrade a piece of gear from one rarity level to another anymore either. However, there is a way to transfer your enchant level and random options from one piece to another of the same type. This also works across different rarity levels. More on that in the section about what to use. When you get a piece of gear from a box, it comes with a support option which is fixed to the piece of gear and cannot be replaced. It consists of a support effect and 2 support stats. The support effect comes in 5 different strengths. Rare gear can have an effect of level 1 to 3, legendary gear 2 to 4, and mythical gear comes with a support effect of level 3 to 5. The type and strength of the support effect is random. The 2 support stats are also random, but their types and strengths are independent of the gear rarity and support effect type and rarity. I found a list of the possible support effects on tera.fandom.com. I also found a general recommendation for what effects to use on howtotera.com. Both links are in the description below, of course. One thing to keep in mind is that if 2 people in the party have the same effect, which boosts the party, then only the stronger one applies. For example, if the tank uses Cruel Curse 5 to reduce physical and magical resistances of bosses, and one of the DPS players is using Cruel Curse 3 because they couldn't get anything better than Cruel Curse yet, then only Cruel Curse 5 will apply and Cruel Curse 3 will be ignored. Let's have a quick look at those general recommendations I mentioned. Tanks should use Cruel Curse for the weapon to boost the party's damage. If you need to spec more into your own damage for something other than dungeons, then Heavy Blow or even Blood Oath are a better choice. Use Perfection or Rock Hard for the chest armor, Death Sentence for the gauntlets, and Phantom Veil for the boots. For DPS players, you'll see the recommendation to go with Rage Suppressor, since it increases damage against enraged monsters. However, some people on the Reaper Discord were saying that Heavy Blow or Blood Oath are better, and I found the same recommendation on the Sorcerer Discord. For the rest, use Perfection for the chest piece, Combat Essence for the gloves, and Last Stand for the boots. Healers are musicians, of course, so they should use Hymn of Courage for the weapon, Hymn of Faith for the chest piece, War Drums for the gloves, and Mage Song for the boots. For the 2 support stats, you basically want the same effects that you want as random options, so let's look at those next. Just like the Kaya gear sets, Mahtnan gear can also have some optional random stats. The color coding for the strength of the stats remains the same, with purple being the strongest and white being the weakest. Which random option you need depends on your class. I recommend that you join the Discord server for your specific class to figure out what the optimal choice is for each gear piece. If you need a link to any of the TERA class Discords, you should join the TERA Master Race server. It's basically a collection of links to other TERA Discord servers. I'll leave the link in the video description below. In general though, you can use physical resistance, physical crit power, physical piercing, and physical amplification for tanks, and magic resistance, magic crit power, magic amplification for healers. For the DPS classes, magical or physical crit power, piercing, amplification, or ignore magical or physical resistance. Whether you should choose the magical or physical versions of the stats depends on your class. Warrior, Slayer, Brawler, Berserker, Valkyrie and Archer use physical stats, and Gunner, Ninja, Reaper and Sorcerer use magical stats. The random stats can be changed by using option change scrolls. There are different scrolls for each gear piece. There are stable option change scrolls and greed hat option change scrolls. They both keep the amount of options the same, but randomize the stat types and strengths. The difference between the stable and the greed hat scrolls is that the greed hat option change scrolls allow you to log some of the stats so they won't be randomized, while the stable scrolls randomize all stats. Logging a stat requires additional materials though. There's also option boost scrolls, which just increase the amount of options by 1, unless there were already 3 anyway. You can get the new gear from loot boxes that drop in dungeons, or by buying the gear at the broker. You can also craft the gear pieces yourself. The designs can be obtained from loot boxes which drop in Drakon Arena, and they can be bought at the crafting merchant for smelting, though the design prices are high at the merchant NPC. The design boxes and the designs themselves can also be traded. The materials needed for crafting this gear are quite expensive as well, so in general it is not recommended to craft the gear at this moment, especially since the support option is still random, so most likely you'd have to craft a bunch of them to get what you need. Buying the item at the broker will probably be cheaper. Be careful when buying leather or plate gear. There are 2 versions, one with magical stats called Occult Mahtnan gear and one with physical stats called Dauntless Mahtnan gear. Make sure the piece you're buying is the correct type for your class. For this part, I'll assume that you're new to endgame content, or that you're a returning player after a long break and you don't have much gold. If you do have some gold saved up, you can buy some legendary or even mythical gear right away. And if you already have enchanted Kaya's soul gear, then you might be able to run dungeons which drop legendary gear. That way you can skip blue gear altogether. At level 65, you get a full set of incomplete Mahtnan gear from the story quest in Highwatch. It is not worth upgrading this set, since it's missing some of the fixed stats. You can use it to complete the Velika's Banquet story quest though, so you get Apex skills before running endgame dungeons. After that, you can also use it to run the dungeons for low gear levels, which drop the loot boxes for the regular blue gear. I suggest farming a few sets of blue gear and then using the one with good random options and a decent support option. The reason being that you can actually transfer your enchant level and random options and the etchings from your rare gear to legendary or even mythical gear. This can be done using a Mahtnan Jewel of magic transference. The support option is not transferred, so you should first find any rarity of gear with good random options for your class and a support option which does the job until you can get legendary or mythical gear. Then you can take your time to find some legendary or mythical gear with the support option you really want, and transfer the enchant level and random options from your blue gear to the better one. You can do this transfer from legendary gear to mythical gear as well, so using legendary gear as a step in between is also an option. The materials you need for enchanting depend on what enchant level you're at already. To enchant to levels 1 to 3, you need Murky Mahtnan Power and Mahtnan Ash. Levels 4 to 6, additionally require forge fragments and power fragments. Levels 7 to 9 require Mahtnan ash, Mahtnan powder, gleaming Mahtnan powder, blacksmith tokens, Tathnut tokens, and tokens of vigor. To reach levels 10 to 12, you need murky Mahtnan powder, Mahtnan ash of course, sparking Mahtnan powder, forge crystals, and heroes crystals. Of course, the higher the enchant level already is, the harder it is to get the materials, the lower the chance of success, and the more materials you need of each type. The type of materials you need and the enchant success rates do not depend on the gear rarity though. The materials needed for enchanting drop in dungeons. You also get more gearboxes than you need, so you can dismantle the pieces with bad stats to get more materials for enchanting. Running dungeons also gives you Awake tokens and Alion's Mark of Valor tokens, which you can use to buy more materials. Awake tokens can also be bought at the Vanguard Quartermaster, and the Mahtnan Ash can be bought at the Development Merchant. There are two different sets of jewelry available, one with a fixed crit factor stat and one with power. Which ones you need depends on your crit cap, which is different for each class and dungeon. Dungeons for low gear levels typically require less crit factor than harder dungeons. To figure out the crit cap, you need to look at the guide for your class or use a DPS meter and experiment with different values until you get close to 100% crit rate on your most important skills. You can switch out items such as your jewelry, innerwear, green crystals, or relic and halidom in order to adjust for the different dungeons. Even though technically the crit cap might be different for each dungeon, it is enough if you have one low crit and one high crit build. Switching between different builds each time might seem like a lot of work. However, you can save up to 5 builds in your player window. Below the relic and halidom, you see small numbered boxes, which are slots for saving builds. And there's a floppy disk icon to save a build. You can switch between them by clicking on one of the 5 boxes, or by using a shortcut, which is Shift+1 to Shift+5 by default. The story quest that I mentioned earlier in this video always gives you power rings, as well as crit factor earrings and necklace, independent of your class. This means that for some classes, the accessories you get are actually not the best choice. For example, healers are aiming at 500 crit factor, which you reach by using a full set of crit factor jewelry, and on Valkyrie and Brawler you should be using a full set of power jewelry. You can just use what the quest gave you until you can either run the dungeons that drop the jewelry, or until you have saved up enough gold so you can buy them at the broker. Even though I said innerwear can be used to fine-tune your crit factor, you might want to go with something else instead. Depending on your class, you might want to choose magical or physical, resistance, amplification, or crit power. So make sure to verify this by looking at the class guide. When it comes to etchings, you should preferably use the ones with physical or magical stats. However, those are still quite expensive and not that easy to craft for new players. If you cannot get the new etchings yet, then you can just use energetic etchings on the weapon and gloves and grounded on the chest piece and boots. Those drop in dungeons, so they are easy to get. And that's it. Make sure to have a look at the video description as well. If there are any corrections or additions after the video goes live, you'll find them there. Let me know what you guys think about the new gear sets. I personally didn't really like the new sets at first, but now that I understand how it works, I think it's actually not that bad. Especially since you can transfer enchant levels and random options from lower rarity gear to mythical pieces. Anyway, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave those below. Thank you all for watching and see you next time.